Hi, and welcome to Extraordinary Pursuits, a podcast from BIP Ventures. I'm your host, Rachelle Kuramoto. Join me each week for masterclasses and conversations about the skills and experiences that matter most to startups in the innovation economy. You will hear from subject matter experts and founders. We're here to inspire, inform, and occasionally even entertain you. Let's get started. Today, we are joined by Mohamed Massaquoi, an organizational psychologist, former NFL wide receiver, and founder of VESSOL. After a standout football career at the University of Georgia and 5 seasons with the NFL, Mohamed transitioned into finance with Morgan Stanley before earning a master's degree in industrial organizational psychology and completing a Harvard Business School program for leadership development. In 2017, a life-changing ATV accident led to the amputation of his left hand. The experience deepened his perspective on resilience, adaptability, and the dynamics of high-performing teams, particularly in times of change. And now, through VESSOL, he works with organizations to navigate change and unlock growth and build teams that can truly thrive together. In this conversation, he shares some of those learnings, some of the ways that great teams come together and grow, and some of the small insidious things that can prevent that growth. This is an episode for anyone who is seeking to lead better and to be a better member of a team. So let's get started. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Extraordinary Pursuits. We are so excited today to have a friend of the pod. Mohamed Massaquoi is joining us, and he's going to talk to us about what really makes a team and what can quietly destroy one. Mohamed knows a few things about teams. He's a former NFL wide receiver turned organizational psychologist. He has led on the field, in finance, in boardrooms, and he has helped leaders across all of them to build resilience and navigate change and create teams that actually work. So today, we are going to get some of those secrets. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I love the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. So, we're going to talk about teams, and I know there's no I in team, so the saying goes. But let's talk about you just for a minute. Give us a little bit of who you are and how you got here.
Yeah, complicated made simple. I would say my family left a civil war in Liberia, so that's how we got to America. Moved around a lot as a kid, so was really just interested in people. Took to sports as a kid, just really loved competition, a way for a young boy to get energy out. That sport led me to the University of Georgia to play football. Ended up playing in the NFL for a number of years. NFL is a very brutal game, and so we have to retire earlier than we want. And made my way into finance just as a way to transition. And then life got really interesting in 2017 when I became an amputee. And that really got me thinking of change. And so I guess Mohamed is a guy that is really fascinated with people, really fascinated with performance, really fascinated with change. And that led to the organizational psychology world. I love it.
Wow, that is a lot of story in a very, very short amount of time. Tell us, just because I know people are going to be wondering, and I should make them look it up, do their own homework, but tell us where you played.
So I played in Cleveland and Jacksonville. So Cleveland Jack drafted me in the second round in 2009. And so you get the dream come true moment to see your name come across the screen.
That is just so cool. And how long did you play in the NFL?
5 years total.
5 years total. Okay. And so then you said you made the transition into finance. That takes lots of shapes and forms. Where did you work in finance? What did you do?
So I was in Morgan Stanley in wealth management. One of the things that was really popular around that time, but still is why athletes go broke. And it was something that I was retiring. I wanted to just understand that world a lot more. And it became really, really just interesting to just see the ins and outs, the nuances. Ballers was that at the time, The Rock kind of put a little more light on it. And so it was a really great experience.
Wow, that is fascinating. And, it says to me that, not only are you someone who is curious and incredibly malleable, but also very people focused. So it makes sense to me that, you would pursue organizational psychology. Um, did you do that more from the perspective of wanting to understand how people work together, or more from the organizational shell side and the strategy of bringing those people into a group?
Well, that's a big question. So
Yeah.
I've been on really successful teams. I've been on teams that weren't successful. And the thing about the successful team, it was just people working really well together. And the not successful team, it wasn't always talent. It was like a lot of other complicated things. And so I didn't really know what to do with that when I left the NFL. But then when I got to Morgan Stanley and I'm a young advisor and people would come and say, hey, I want to invest like this. I didn't really have the skill set to do that. And so I would have to, obviously it takes time to learn, but the athlete in me would say, you can go produce this result as a result of what you do and what your team does. And there is no cap on that. There is no like 10% growth in the market. You can 10% it, you can 1,000% it, you can 1,000,000% it. The upside is unlimited. And I really became focused on solving that problem of how do you really lead? How do you maximize your team to get whatever impact you want in your business, which then gets you the financial result if that's what motivates you.
Yeah, that's so interesting. We talk often about KPIs. We talk about, setting these key performance indicators, but so often that is followed up by, okay, here's your checklist. Here are the things you have to do. What I hear you saying, which is so interesting to me, and I think is going to be a great segue into sort of the human side of this, is, people have this potential to make it happen. With a good leader, those people are the ones who are going to be able to work together and on their own to execute on the right strategy. Am I hearing you correctly there?
Yeah, I'm an optimist just by nature,
Yeah.
but I also realize that there's so much unlocked potential, whether it be people don't know what to do, they're motivated, they don't have the right structure, they're not aligned to the right thing, they don't have the right development. And so the core of them is, sky's the limit. Whether they become that or not is really dependent on the people around them, the leader that they have under them. And so you can go in and kind of shape these things to where you turn a team that may not have looked great on paper into a championship level team. But then you see the opposite side where you have a team that looks really great on paper and they don't perform the way that they're supposed to, or a person that you see potential in that doesn't manifest into what they could become.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We interviewed an executive talent advisor not too long ago. One of the things that he said really kind of goes along with this, and I think is going to be a good segue into kind of picking your brain on this a bit. And what he said was, he has seen so many times where there has been a candidate who looked perfect on paper and a second candidate who did not. But when they put them in a room and they ideated and they collaborated, that second person, the one who didn't quite look as good on paper, they were the right fit. And so looking beyond the checklist is really, really important. And one of the things that I've kind of heard you talk about a bit is that, just because you bring people together, that does not make them a team, right? So let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, obviously, there are some common misconceptions about what makes a team. Can you share a little bit of what you've seen, or from your organizational psychology background, what are some of the misconceptions about teams?
Yeah, this is a lot of times when people are thinking teams, they're thinking we're under the same organization or we have the same jersey on. And it's not as clean as that. There has to be a lot of interdependence. Even if you look at a football team, the world that I come from, yes, we're all Georgia, but the true team, it could either be the offensive team or the defensive team. There is no real interdependence on these two worlds most of the time. And so they're teaming more times than not. And so you get that confused if people don't actually know who they're working with, how they should be working with, when they should go outside of their team to go work with someone else to complete something. A lot of times it's more sequence that people are putting together as a team, when in reality, the core team, there's a lot of interdependence, there's a lot of role clarity, there's a lot of I need you to do my job in some capacity, is where we get to like the true core nugget of the team.
That's so interesting. So if I hear you correctly, one of the things that is that sort of binding force is a shared understanding of a very specific objective and maybe a shared purpose.
Shared purpose, shared alignment, interdependence, high trust. And now you can zoom out and there's a lot of teaming that's going on that, makes this organization work, and we all get the goal that we desire at the end of the day. But when you really think about it, who do I need to work with on a day-to-day, more frequent basis to do my job? And how do we interact in a way that's beneficial for all of us?
Okay. So if you're inside of an organization and you say, especially a larger organization, it sounds like, you've used the word teams and you've used the word teaming. This is sort of teams within teams. Is that correct?
Teams that are next to each other. Like, think of it almost like when you look at org charts, you have marketing, you have legal. Sometimes they're going to overlap, sometimes they don't. And that's where the frustration comes in, because you have those silos that pop up and they don't necessarily know, and they're competing against the same things, when in reality they haven't figured out how to work together sequentially.
I see. Okay. That actually was a word that was coming to mind, was that siloing, and making sure, how do you make sure that that does not happen, especially if you have, say, a marketing team. In our case, we're very fortunate to have a marketing team that is very aligned, works very interdependently and well together. I think, is there a risk in organizations when there is a team that is super aligned that they might not get some of those overlaps?
Not necessarily. It really just depends on, once again, what do we need to do our job? If we keep on the football theme, we need security, we need concessions, we need referees, we need a training staff. Sometimes they overlap, sometimes they don't, but we need all these pieces. I think it's more important to understand how these pieces fit together. That's not always crystal clear, where people are just kind of doing their job in their own little bubble, not really accounting for how things connect more on a global perspective.
Got it. Okay. So it's kind of a multi-layered approach to thinking about this.
For sure.
So we understand kind of what a team isn't. It's not just a bringing together of a group of people who might have the same skill sets, and even maybe a shared desire to wear the same jersey. The blue shirt team, for example. But if you strip it down, what are some of the non-negotiables? What are some of the elements that really do pull a team together? We've mentioned a couple of them, but is there kind of a checklist? Is it that simple?
Yeah, we all fundamentally have to want to accomplish the mission. If not, you're going to have people that are detracting from it. We have to share the same values. That doesn't mean we have to be the same person. But if we're saying we're all going to be competitive, or we're all going to be collaborative, and someone doesn't fit into that, it's going to be really hard for the team to work. You have to have a healthy degree of conflict. Without conflict, I think that you start to get groupthink, or you start to get resentment, because people are just casually following the leader, and really they may have some other ideas of what may be best. We talked about role clarity. If we don't know what we're doing, feedback and accountability are, I think those go hand in hand. If we're not talking to each other of how to calibrate what we're doing, and we're not holding each other accountable, I think things start to fall off the rails.
So I think something that I hear is sort of an underpinning of a lot of those things is candor and trust. That doesn't just happen. It can take some time, right? How do you guide groups that are coming together and forming a team to get to those sort of non-negotiables? I would imagine they don't happen right off the bat.
No, a lot of it comes through shared experience. It's almost if we zoom out and the way that you have your friendships, it's not just one big thing. It's just over time, these little drips that we've gotten to know a person, gotten to know their nuances. I can talk to you a certain way. I can't talk to this person a certain way, and vice versa. And the more we can kind of orient in the forming of the team, we allow people to start to work together because we're not
Mm.
always going to work in, I don't know, pie in the sky, euphoric, everything's going well. Sometimes there is going to be tension, and that's where the team actually gets stressed. And you want to make sure that we're working together well in those moments. But I have to know, you have a kid, you have you're caring for this, you care about that. Without knowing these things, it's just like this formulaic check the box. And I don't think that's a recipe for success.
Yeah. Okay. So people are really bringing their whole selves to this team. You mentioned if they have a kid, what else is going on with them. Are there any other sort of tells that indicate that you have a good team either established or on its way?
I think the ability to disagree,
Mm.
which means I can trust you, which means I'm trying to protect us, which means that I have a differing opinion. The ability to not necessarily everybody is going to be treated fairly. Not everybody's going to be treated the same, just depending on the nature of the team. But everybody feels that they're valued, they're appreciated, they got an opportunity to do work at a high level. The ability to, once again, is to talk and communicate. Teams have to talk because things move so fast, they change. What was relevant yesterday may not be relevant today. And to really orient people and everybody really be moving. The ability to take your ego out of it is important. If it's all about me on the team, I'm not going to operate in the best interest of the team, which is eventually going to sabotage the team.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And actually that's, that is something else that I'm curious about is, I would imagine that sometimes it's very obvious that there's a problem on a team, but more often than not, things that start to put cracks in the foundation of a team are probably more insidious. Are there any particular watch outs that, team leaders should be aware of?
Is not leading the team.
Mm.
And as simple as that sounds, a lot of times meetings are spent going over business, or they're spent forecasting, or they're spent doing something outside of like truly leading and bringing up problems, bringing up things that need correction, bringing up new ways of working, realigning people to mission, values, goals. Without that, those cracks start to appear, and you have a lot of people talking in the background about what's wrong. And so the more a leader can stay on top of that, like really have their thumb on the pulse, they can mitigate some of those risks. We got feedback almost after every play. We for
Mm.
sure got feedback after every practice, after every game. And they were correcting the things that they wanted to weed out of the performance because we function at such a high level. Without that constant leading and mending and molding and all those things, those cracks can appear, and they're really hard to patch up when they do.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, that brings up a question in my mind when you're thinking about small companies. You have a startup and it's a resource, it's a leader who is doing sales, and they're also doing hiring, and they're also probably doing the books at 10 o'clock at night. They're doing all the things. To be a constant monitor of the people on the team to make sure that they're doing well, they're doing okay, that they're working well together, that there aren't these cracks forming, that they're giving consistent feedback and, candor as things are happening. So there's that constant learning. That's a really big ask. For a small company, is it more valuable for a leader to sort of have, almost more of a management approach of saying, okay, we're just going to continually every day be on top of these things? Or is it more important for them to put those more tactical components of the team management in someone else's hands so that they can oversee on a more cohesive level how the team is doing as a unit?
I think it's a blend of both. I think it's them constantly communicating what the norms are within the organization and the big things they should obviously tackle. But then whoever the next person is, they should know what they're trying to be held accountable for. Um, the other part of that is the ability to give autonomy in such a way that I know the role that I have to do, and I have the latitude to go out and like figure out other things, but then communicating that back in the system so I know that, hey, the breadth of my job has just expanded. And I don't know if you're doing these things. These things are going well. These things aren't going well. These are the things that you need to know. And so it's this constant communicating back and forth. This is what I need you to do. This is what we're learning. This is what we're going to update. And you're constantly just repeating that cycle over and over until you can either hire better or until that gets fixed, or if you realize that you can't solve it internally and you have to bring in some external help.
Yeah. Okay. Um, okay. So let's actually stop for a second and talk about externals. You know, M&A is picking up. You've got all of these companies that are starting to merge, that are acquiring. And I would imagine when that happens, I mean, we know when that happens that teams come together. There are some redundancies. There's some merging of groups. Have you seen situations where a merger has gone really well? And have you seen ways that, they've done certain things that have made that go well?
I think when you respect both cultures and you're trying to create a better version of both cultures, when you're like taking the best of both and moving forward, the systems, the people, the artifacts, like all the things, when you're almost forcing your will and say, we've brought you into our system and we aren't going to take account for anything that you did, there's tension there. Or when it's a sloppy integration of it hasn't really been thought out of how we're truly going to integrate all these systems. We've just looked at whatever we think the financial results are going to be. It's very hard to clean that up on the back end when you're almost like just putting random pieces in place because nobody thought about it on the front end. And it's very frustrating to the people that are having to like execute on this because they still have to do their real job while also trying to do this integration, while also trying to do other things that are in the future. And so that's when it gets very sloppy.
Yeah, yeah. And I would imagine that there is a component of fear that might get in the way of the team really coming together. Are there certain things that people bring to work that either make a team work better or, sometimes get in the way of a team working optimally?
A lot of the fear is in the unknown. If I know we're going to merge and we might reduce headcount, or I might not be needed, or what's my competition, and nobody's speaking to these things, then I'm going to make up my own story. And so the more a leader can get on the front of that and either help people understand what their options are when they stay, or if they are going to exit, make sure that they're prepared so that they land on their feet, not just in a package, but transitioning to a better job. So, because if you don't, the people that stayed may be frustrated at how you did one of their good friends. So people that really think through the human side of it, if you've hired well and people know how to do their job, that's not a problem. They will figure that out. But if you haven't hired well, then you have a separate problem that you need to figure out, that a merger may or may not be able to solve for. But how people experience work through after the merger, that may leave a stain because you may have a really great strategy that people choose not to execute on because they're frustrated and they're upset.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it comes back to what we talked about earlier, which is, that clarity from the leader, top down, setting a very clear purpose, a clear objective, clear expectations, and then the trust across the team that, we're all working together to achieve those things.
Yeah. And one big thing that I want to point out, a team's not going to win everything. Like it's very rare that you have success across the board. And so you're managing for the good, you're managing for the bad, and you're managing in a way that people still want to continue to play the game. And they still want to trust you in your leadership and not feel that they're going to, receive the bad end of the stick when things are going really bad.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really, really good point. I love all of the very, I think you said it, the very optimistic and very human approach to this. And, something else that I like about the way that you approach this concept of team is that it's not overcomplicated. It doesn't have to be over engineered. It has to be extremely human. It has to be honest and candid. And um, that's that's a good reminder. It makes it seem like as much strategy as we put into this, it's actually a very organic thing.
Yeah, what's interesting to me, none of us can predict the future. And,
Mm,
we like to put our spreadsheets together, we like to whiteboard, but we're really iterating there. And we're doing that by combining people and combining insights and combining resources. And the more we do that in real time, over the long term, we get to where we need to get to. It's not just like one session that we kind of sit in our glass offices and figure out. And so if you're bringing these people together that want to develop, that want to improve, that feel like the organization is going to take care of them, they want to succeed and they're going to work to do everything that they can to succeed. And if a leader is setting the conditions for that, they'd be really surprised by just giving them alignment to something and then giving them autonomy so that they can empower them to do the work in a way that makes the most sense.
yeah, yeah, that autonomy thing that's a big one. I think that doesn't happen without trust on everybody's part, and there's lots of studies that show that that is a really important piece of work, especially as we've all worked on our own and in
Yeah,
hybrid situations. And, I mean, those teams have kind of taken lots of different shapes over the last 5 years. So, um,
1000%.
yeah. So, as we begin to wrap up here, I would actually love to return back to you. You have a company called VESSOL. It's a really cool brand, and I would love to hear a little bit more about what VESSOL does, and then maybe you can kind of tell people, what you've got going or how they can learn more.
Yeah, so Vessel, we how do you create high performance teams through change? And so we come alongside leaders who are trying to lead in the best way that they can, and they have teams and they have people, and they're fundamentally shifting something in the company. It could be they're trying to innovate, they're changing their business model, there's a new leader, they're merging companies together, something really thorny is taking place. And so we'll come in and really in three parts. We're either speaking to the entire team, like really orient their minds, shifting all that. Then we're working with a leadership team to like really give them the skill set over a period of time of like, this is how you lead through change. And then we'll advise or coach, whatever the terminology is, that senior leader to say, this is how you set up your organization to really, really maximize change. And we look at change as an opportunity to reinvent in a way that sets you up for success for the future.
Yeah, that's incredibly useful. And given the fact that most companies live in a state of change, I would imagine that you stay busy.
It's always going on and it
Yeah.
will continue to go on. And unfortunately or fortunately, this disruption or change is something that, we kind of perk up for.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, what is that? The only constant is change, I think is how that saying goes. Well, that's very
1000%.
cool. Yeah. Where can people learn more about Vessel and about you?
So Vessel, the website is THEVESSOL.com. And so happy to share information on there, active on LinkedIn. And so those are the two places. We'll be releasing a podcast soon, same game, different turf, where we interview other leaders who have gone through change and navigated certain things to kind of crowdsource the best insights of people really doing it.
Love it. That's awesome. Well, we'll make sure that those links are in the show notes. And as we close, any final word of wisdom for leaders who are working on just trying to get this right?
One of the more underutilized things is really just talking to their peers. People think that leadership is lonely, but even just forming your own team. Everything that I've done in life that has been successful has had a team around it. And I think we think that we have to go on this journey alone, when in reality, you could have a peer going through something similar, or they've already gone through it, or they will go through it, and serve it as a resource to them to help them get to the other side is, something that people don't take advantage of enough.
Somebody in your vessel with you. I love
Exactly.
it. That's awesome. What a great place to end. Mohamed, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been incredibly enlightening, and I really appreciate you sharing with us.
Thank you so much. Keep up the great work.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Extraordinary Pursuits. If you enjoyed what you heard, please like and share the show. It helps others to find us. Now, let's go build the future of the innovation economy.